Okay, so welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about soil and looking at different types of soil, as well as answering any questions you guys might have about working the roots in your yard, if you have a yard, or doing pots or whatever kind of situation you might be working with. So I wanted to start off by first, let's talk about native soil. So wherever you live, there's a type of soil that is native, meaning that it's like what is there before you start touching it. This is where I live in California. This is our native soil. It's really, really dry and dusty. And a lot of things actually grow really well in this. Like this jade plant is just right there in this really hard, dry soil. And that's totally fine. Like that's what they're called, native plants. They grow in the soil that's native to that land. Then you do have options and things that you can do. So with this native soil, now I have 3 different types of soil. So over here, this is, I guess you would call this like a tropical type of soil. Uh-oh, let me admit these. Okay, there's that. Okay, so, oh goodness. Okay. All right, so whoever just jumped on, just make sure you're muted. I'm using my phone, so I don't have that much capacity from the phone. So, all right, what you're looking at here, I was just showing it. This is the native soil where I live, and I've transformed, I guess would be the word, through a couple of techniques that I'm going to share with you today. So this is one type of soil where I have all these papaya trees growing, and there's an avocado tree, some bell peppers, and some mallow. That mallow is I didn't invite that mallow, it just came on its own. And so, let's see. There's another type of soil over here, which is more like a forest. And you can already tell, like, it's a whole different vibe in this little section. Forest soil means that there's going to be big, would you mute yourself, dear? Whoever just jumped in, I think that was Leslie. Forest soil is going to be really good for trees, and there's going to be covering on it. So you can see this is like, basically it's like a forest. In a forest, there's going to be a lot of stuff on top, which is kind of protecting the soil, keeping it really moist. There's more shade in forest soil. So these are all trees growing over here in the forest soil. So after we get done having the close-ups, I'm going to show you the size of this area. It's really small. So these are all avocado trees, and all along here, it's that same kind of soil that's just very, it's very protected. So when you dig in, then you can see the moisture in there. It's more hospitable to things like, I was trying to grow burdock root. I wanted to grow osha root, and those things grow in the forest. So I was trying to make forest soil. Then over here is your typical garden soil. So this is where I get most of the sunlight, and it's very bare right now, but that's because I had a bunch of vines, a chayote vine growing, and I just cut it down. So now this is, you can actually walk over there and show you that chayote vine. The tap is here. So this, I don't know if you can tell, but it's ginormous. Just from one chayote. Let me see, I have some of those here too. Look at how my foot just sinks into this soil. This also was, this was everything that you've seen so far started off as this. So I'm just showing you that because it is very possible. And what I'm going to do today is teach you some techniques to make the 3 types of soil that I have, which you don't need to do anything to get native. Whatever you have, you're starting off with something, and that's what's native to your area. Over here, tropical. So basically tropical is gonna have more like, I mean, for me anyway, it's more of a clay. It's more like clay. It's still quite hard because tropical would be getting a lot of sun and a lot of water. So I do have to water these more than I have to water other parts of the yard. There's a pineapple growing here, a pineapple growing there, and then everything else is just papaya seeds. All right, so we talked about forest. And then over here in the garden, where this is garden soil is gonna be a lot more, like I have to do a lot more with this. So you can see I'm constantly throwing my tea leaves in it. I'm every day throwing stuff in this side. And what's going to happen next over here, this is where I'll plant garden things that just need lots of sun and water, and might want to start off doing, like, the process that I did is growing something that you're not going to eat first, just to get the soil used to having, like, to hosting plants. What you're looking at there is just, these are native aloe. I think this is a type of jade, and then this huge jade plant that just keeps growing with like no effort. I don't have to do anything to it. All right, so oh, one more thing. We'll talk a little bit about pots, and then just things that you can do in pots if that's what you're working with. So a lot of people don't have this. I'll give you a view of this space. It's really not that big. I'm in an apartment, and basically when my neighbors come down this stairway, there's just that along that little aisle, which is what I was calling forest soil. And then back there is the tropical soil, where there's a good amount of sun that comes in there, and I had the papaya trees there. That all, see, I'm underneath his balcony, so there's no sunlight there. So I just covered it with cedar. And then over here, this gets variable sun. It changes with the seasons because it is in a weird position. So that's what I'm personally working with. What else? Oh, one more thing before we go inside and start a little discussion. The compost. This is really my pride and joy, because it is a heaping pile of some of the best soil I have ever seen in my life. And this is coming from composting my food. So if you haven't started compost, we'll talk about that too, and I'll give you some ideas of ways that you can do compost minimally. So like as you can see, I don't have one of those barrels, or I don't have the worm munching barrel. I have nothing but a space that every day I dig a hole, throw whatever food we used, and then bury it. And I have a rotation. So it'll go, like, if I started over here, there's food under here. Now cover it up. And then I'll take the next section, bury, dig a hole, throw the food, cover it up. And I go over here and I work my way around so that there's constantly something being decomposed, and there's constantly soil that is already ready. Okay, so I'm gonna go back inside. Let me walk through my house. I'm gonna pause this, or let's see if I can pause it. Recording. Please ask permission. All right, you guys still there? Original sound. Okay, can you guys still hear me? It says it's recording now, so that would be good. Yes, okay, good. All right, so now let's go, let's see. Let's start off with double digging. Double digging is this technique where You can take, oh, you know what? There was one section in my soil that I didn't tell you about. I didn't show it to you. I don't know why. It's the one I posted in the picture on Instagram. I'm working with herbs in pots that I buy from grocery stores. So I want to be able to feed the soil and make it more mine. I get you. Who is that? Liz. Okay. I give them my tea leaves and water. Okay, yes. Well, I'll start off with this then, because this is one of the things I was going to tell you about, and then I'll talk about the double digging next. So, especially if you have plants in pots, it's really good to put yourself in them. And I mean everything, like my fingernails. When I clip my fingernails, I'll go over because there's a lot of minerals in your nails. So fingernail clippings, spit, if I have, and I will spit in there. I obviously, my menstrual blood, that's a guaranteed 100%. And I have a couple of plants that like primarily get the menstrual blood. My rose plant, that's the one that I always give first, and then over there to the papayas. And then other ones sparingly, but those are like the main ones. Urine, like you guys, urine, it's so before we had plumbing, everybody, all of the like what went through our body is earth. It's exactly the same. Not exactly, well, pretty much it is, but okay. So whenever we eat food and we do the composting process, and then we let go of the waste, whether it's liquid or solid, there's things in there that used to go back into the soil, just like out in a natural environment where there's animals. The animals are still in relationship with the earth that way. They're still putting their minerals and their waste into the soil. And there's a ton of minerals in our urine, a ton that are exactly what the soil is lacking. So one of the reasons all over, like just on the earth in general, our soil is mineral deficient, and we are mineral deficient. Overall, like even the most healthy, eat only vegetables and drink the best water, and you think you're super healthy, even that person is likely mineral deficient unless they're supplementing minerals. And the reason for that mineral deficiency is because the soil all over is deficient. And I think that it has to do with because we are not replenishing the soil the way that nature would have it to be. And not to say that the ways that we do replenish the soil aren't okay, because since we are nature, humans are nature, and we have developed other ways to replenish the soil, there are some of those ways that are good, like the one I'm telling you now. I call it sun tea. So basically what you would do, or what I do currently, is have a big bucket. I pee in the bucket. My son, the youngest one, my oldest one is like, ew, that's so gross, no way. But me and my younger son pee in the bucket, usually in the morning. The first 3 times we go pee, and then I fill the rest of it up with water. So you don't want to put just urine on definitely not on leaves. Like urine on leaves is never going to be good. It's too hot. There's too much minerals in it, and it'll burn the leaves. And also you don't want to pour just straight urine onto the soil, because it's too hot, means that it's like too much minerals. So you have to dilute it. So with that big, I think it's like a 5-gallon bucket, I'll pee 3 times. Kailash will pee 3 times. So then I'll fill the rest of it up with water. So it's a lot of water. And then I'll go around and put that on the soil. So that, for the question that was just asked, like that is such a good way to be the same, like to be with that plant that, and you mentioned giving the water so off of your altar of your water offerings, you'll take that and put that into the soil. Now, oh, my hair, when I comb my hair, I will take that and bury it under. Now there's it's kind of sketchy because like in my pots. I don't put that in the soil because I'm not going to stay here and I don't want my hair staying here. And I know probably Mystic would be like, oh my God, you're putting your hair. I don't know. It's delicate with your hair. So just think about it, because there is also some, you know, like if your hair gets picked up by a bird and the bird is like weaving it into their nest, and it, you know, there's things that could happen that maybe you don't want for your hair. I go back and forth on it. Honestly, I go back and forth on what I'm going to do with my hair after I comb it. But I have been known to do that, just tuck it right into the soil and be like, oh, here you go, like an offering to the plant, because the minerals. And the other thing that my grandma taught me when I was a kid, my mouth gets watery just thinking about it, but whenever you plant seeds, that you would put the seed in your mouth, so you're like covering it with your genetic material, your DNA, all of that. And then you put that in the soil. And I always will make a little prayer to, you know, because I want these things that I'm planting to feed my kids, to be a match to, you know, that we're able to have a relationship with whatever is going to grow. So my mouth is watery. It's almost like, where's the seed? Because I'm thinking about it, it must be time to do that. And I have been working in the yard today. So that's another really cool secret. So talked about the pee, the blood, the nails, spit. Okay, now let's talk about double digging. This is a miracle. Like, I cannot even tell you. Like, you can just try it. I promise you that if you do a double digging on, even if it's just this much soil, like if you have a place around your apartment, or even if it's not around your apartment, like there's something that I used to do when I lived in the other place that didn't have much soil. I would go out to alleys and places that are kind of abandoned, and I would go plant my stuff there. Nobody is thinking about it. Like, I had a whole bunch of broccoli growing, broccoli and kale. I call it Botanical Alley. I don't know if I ever took you there, Megan, when you've been here. Next time you come, I'll take you. It's beautiful. And I don't have anything that I planted, not this year. I haven't done it at all. But you can, it's called, the technical term is guerrilla gardening. And that's where you just go and some people will just like shatter seeds everywhere. I'm more meticulous about it. What I would do actually is do the starters at home. So put them in those little manure, they're manure based little tiny pots. And you start the seed in there. And then whenever it's strong enough that you're ready to let it go out on its own, you just take one of those little tactical shovels, so it's like inconspicuous, stroll down through the alley or wherever there's a soil patch that looks like it's getting a good amount, decent amount of water and sunlight, and just dig a little hole, put the whole pot in there, cover it up, and you just walk away. Yeah, I got a cemetery shovel too. We keep it in the car. Yep, just got to get that. Sometimes you got to get that cemetery dirt. So you can do that too. You can do guerrilla gardening, and that's always, I love it. I really love that. All right, so double digging is where you're going to take a little section of soil or a big section. Like when I was on the permaculture homestead for my training, we were doing double digs for like a whole field. That is some serious work. So the section that I showed you earlier in the video, not so serious. It's small, it's totally doable. For, you know, whatever. If you have friends, you can also, anything is doable. So basically what you're gonna do is take a regular size shovel. So the spade is about that big. And you're gonna go, your regular size shovel, they say 2 spades deep. Now I'm thinking how big that shovel is, and you know, oof, that seems pretty deep. Yeah, all right, so about 2 spades deep, maybe 1.5. You're gonna line it out, make it look nice, because part of working in the soil is aesthetics. This is a Venus topic. This is Earth topic. So make it look nice. So what I did is made it into a perfect shape that I wanted mine to be. And then I made it into a nice, neat little kind of strange square rectangle kind of shape. And then once you've taken out 2 spades deep, you push all of that topsoil off to the side. Now you've got this like grave, basically. Next thing you're going to do is throw in worms that if you have at your local garden shop, if you buy worms, I think they probably all come in a bag of manure. If they don't, get the worms, get the manure, and then whatever kind of like, I will call this dry compost. So dry compost is, you've been pulling weeds, you've been trimming your plants. Dry compost is like dry leaves and twigs and all that kind of stuff. You want to put some of that in there. And the purpose of the dry compost is for aeration. So it's nice to have a mixture, the worms, the manure, the dry compost, and some people will say different things. So like, I don't layer it because I feel like that's just unnatural. Like that wouldn't happen in nature. So a lot of times when you're working with the soil, ask yourself that, would this happen in nature? Or is this, because the principle of permaculture is, this ain't really it, but I call it get in where you fit in. Because you want to like see what's already there and harmonize with it. You want to get in where you fit in with what's already happening. So whenever you're doing the double digging, try to make it seem like, all right, this could possibly have happened, that there would be manure and worms and some dry compost. And then if you have compost, like if you have a compost pile, or you can buy compost, because before I had that pile, I had to buy compost. And then so you put the compost in there also. So you would say dry compost, wet compost, worms, manure. For manure, you can also use chicken manure. They make these pellets, chicken, so it's like, I guess, nicer to work with because the smell isn't as much. You can get the pellets like that. Okay, now you've got that. Now what you're going to do is bring back that topsoil. Put the topsoil back on top. And so you're going to have kind of a heap. It's going to be a little bit bigger. Not so much though, because let's see, what ends up often happening is that you might have too much topsoil at the end, and that's fine. Just let it be around. It'll eventually, everything's going to shift and sort. It's going to compact itself. Don't compact it though. Once you've got your material that you've added into that hole, put the the top soil back on top and just let it be there. And I would say like a week. I never wait a week. I always wait like 2 or 3 days because I'm like so eager to do the thing. Waiting a week would probably be better because then you can see how everything's going to settle and shift. The worms have more time to get settled to the area that they're in. If you wait a little bit longer, there's going to be more life happening. Okay, the next thing, make a note of this. It's a real common mistake, and also I did it for years and years. Don't mess with the soil. Once you have established this double dig thing that I'm telling you about, don't go what we call tilling. Tilling is the devil. Tilling is completely the devil. Like it destroys the culture of what's happening under the soil. There's innumerable magical little things happening underneath that soil between my mouth is getting watery again, thinking about the cultures. But basically it's like every little bug that's in there, like microscopic bug, is setting up its own little home. It's like the stability is being created, just like a culture needs a certain temperature, a certain amount of sun, a certain amount of water. It's the same way with your soil. So don't go like do this double dig and then don't ever do it again. Like, don't ever do it again. Now you just trust that whatever is happening, and that's the type of soil that's being created there. It's soil building. There's things you can do to help the process, like applying cedar chips, or there's certain plants that you can put as a covering, like adding comfrey is a really good covering. So the soil will be protected. Now that's kind of going over into what I called the forest soil, where you would plant a cover over the soil to keep it protected and more moist. The other thing you can always do is throw some type of chip, like a wood chip of some sort. Like I use cedar in my yard, but it depends on what you want. Cedar also helps to protect from what we call a pest, like certain bugs and certain those little animals. Skunks don't care and raccoons don't care, because I still see them coming around. They don't really do as much as they used to do. So I think the cedar kind of repels them also. All right, so after you've waited about a week with this double dig, then you can go in, you can plant seeds. I can almost guarantee you, if you have good sunlight and you have a good watering routine, they will flourish. They will not just grow, they will flourish. And then also, if you go and buy starter plants that have already, I guess they're just called starter plants, then you can put those in there too. The thing is, you want to make sure you don't do it at the peak of the sunshine, because transplanting a starter plant into the soil is a really delicate thing. It's just like bringing a new baby home, that you want it to be comfortable in that space. So what I always do is bring my spray bottle, and as soon as I pull up the starter plant, I'll spray it. I'm like, oh, hi, here we are. We're going into this new soil. I've dug you this little spot. I put it there, cover it, and I just spray it. And then, line them up however you want to line them up. Remember that some plants don't get along with other plants. So you want to just do a little bit of research before you plant things, because some attract bugs that the other one doesn't like, and vice versa. And like, there's this whole thing. It's very simple. So don't be disturbed, like don't be deterred. You just have to research. Find out what type of soil the plant likes. So some of these plants want dry gravel, like blueberries. They're acidic. So you can't put blueberries with the papaya trees, because the papaya trees are more alkaline. They love this clay and all these things. And the blueberries just want like rocks. So you have to it's very easy. Do a little research. All right, so there's the double digging. I have one more thing I want to tell you guys about preparing now for the spring. So there's something called cover crops. And when I showed you the yard earlier, there's that whole section that I said I had just cut down the chayote vine, and it had been shaded the whole year. Now that I took it out, it's out in the sun. I'm trying to decide. I haven't quite decided yet, but a cover crop is basically something like fava beans or peas or wheat, something that it grows easily. It grows in this time of year. Actually, if you just Google cover crops, alfalfa comes to mind. Basically, what a cover crop is, that is the preparation. So those fava beans always do really good in my yard, but you do want to rotate it. For cover crops, it's not something that you're like counting on it to eat, and you can eat it. So fava beans, you get the beans, you get the leaves. The leaves are delicious, even just raw, putting them in the salad, or you can cook them. They're really good. And what happens is, as the fall and the winter go through, those fava beans have created this beautiful network, this root system. It's like preparing the soil. It's doing that whole thing where they're like aerating. So the roots are going, my mouth is like, I am so in love with soils. I'm just like, my mouth keeps getting watery. It's really weird. anyway, they're gonna do their little thing and spiral down and create this beautiful network under the ground. And then when it's spring and you're ready to plant your spring crop, we call it chop and drop. You don't pull the roots out. You just chop them down. You let the droppings fall into the soil, and then you plant around it. So now what you have is this rich network underground. Now you also have the nutrition from what you've chopped and dropped. So that's creating this like really nutrient dense environment for the soil. And then when you plant your spring seeds, they are going to grow magnificently, like better than you've ever expected or than it ever has before. Plus you're doing your sun tea. So watering is another tricky thing. Like my son was growing, he had about 6 plants big plants that he started from starter plants and like tended to them. And he was doing a watering routine where he had like a schedule. And what I noticed was that sometimes my intuition, like this is what I trust. I don't trust any schedules with the plants. You find out how much moisture they need, how much water do they need, and then just check on them. Just like every day, you just kind of check on them, see how they're doing. The plant will tell you. And I know this sounds so like back before I was this much into it, I was like, they're not talking to me. I don't understand. I'm not, but the more you have to start and get your hands in the soil and create the relationship by going every day and asking, even if you think you're not asking the plant, you're like, how does that plant look? What does it look like? And And then eventually you're like, hey, how are you doing? What do you need? Pause, listen. Okay, yeah. And then you'll feel it. There's like a tug. And even when I'm not home, when I first started going to Kauai every other month or whatever, I would feel my plants and I would call my friend Ahmed and be like, hey, can you go check on the plants? Can you check on these papaya trees? Can you check on that echinacea plant that I'm growing? Because you're deeply connected. Your joy, this is crazy to me, but whenever I would be feeling joy, I would like think of my plants, and it was like sharing that energy with them. And so they want to impress you because you love them so much. They want to show off. They want to impress you because that's how relationships are. That's how love relationships are. It's like, I'm so proud of you. You're so wonderful and beautiful. And you feel more proud of yourself and more wonderful and beautiful, and you grow. It's just the same way with your plants. So watering is part of the relationship. So I don't recommend getting on a watering schedule. I recommend going out every day. I do it first thing in the morning. Go out there, see what's up. Oh, there's been some skunks here. I can see the claws. You're just kind of checking out the place. Now, when you get a property and you have a bigger space, you really want to be watching. I mean, I do it in my yard too. You want to be watching at what time the angles of the sun is changing and directing light into different areas of your space. That's going to be really important. See how when the rains come, what areas of that space are collecting more water, what areas are more dry. So you'll start to notice where there's a slope. You'll start to notice where there's a tree that's blocking at this certain time of day. And then you're like, oh, there's about 4 hours of the day that there's not sunlight getting into that area. Instead of chopping down the tree, I'm going to plant things that need less sunlight. So this is, permaculture. You get in where you fit in. Can you do that in pots too? What? I forgot. I forgot. Can you do what in pots? Oh, chop and drop. Wow. I don't know. What I'm feeling is that the root system in pots is like overwhelming. Like whenever I guess it depends on the pot too, but I feel like every
potted plant that I've had, when I take it out, it's all roots. So I don't think that would work, because if you there's like just not enough space for the new roots to grow, you know. Right now I have a yard, but my lease will be up in February. Yeah, I have such a heartache about this, because like I'm thinking about moving. And so there's this like thing, I did it with my kids at one point too. Like my ex-husband was moving to Japan, and I was like, oh my God, these are my kids, and but they're his kids too. And it's like a certain way, okay, let me not talk about the kids, because you can't really relate kids and plants. Some ways you can, but what I feel is that you're in love with the earth. You have a relationship with earth. And whatever you do to build that relationship with earth, there is no loss. You're developing skills, you're developing your relationship, and it's just like working with ancestors. The more you support and love earth and give offerings every day through your water, your spit, your toenails, whatever, like whatever it is, the more you're doing that, the more earth is also going to be supporting you. It's an undeniable, you will notice it. So in February, when your lease is up, you've cultivated this relationship with earth. And at that point, it's like, go with God, you know, that you're like, thank you. And you can tell the new people who are coming to rent, like, I really love these plants that I've planted. I hope that you will too. Take care of them. Something like that. And I think about it every day when I look outside. I'm like, oh my God, this cherry moya tree that I'm growing, there's 2 of them that are huge that will give fruit for sure. I'm just like, oh, I wonder if somebody's just going to chop them down. And they might. And there's nothing I can do about it because I don't own this place. Sometimes people come and spray around I can tell, I'm like, did they spray? Because I had this kale tree that was growing and giving so much kale, and then the people came and did the like maintenance. But normally what I do as an apartment renter, I will go out there and do the maintenance for our whole complex, just so they don't have to hire somebody, because when they hire somebody, bad things happen. Like they step on things they shouldn't step on. It's just not good. So I'll just do that work myself. But really, you know, what can you do? I love you too. All right. So does anybody have any questions? Like if you have any specific questions about something that you're working with, maybe I can help you. So you can just unmute yourself and ask, or you can type it in. Rosemary in a pot. Wow, rosemary. Yeah, rosemary likes to get big too. I mean, I think all plants, like I got this one yesterday, it's in a pot and it's just like really pretty and reminds me of Hawaii. And I thought about that too, like, well, you're really little, it'll stay little because the roots don't have space to expand. But if you get it into a bigger pot, it will have more space to expand. And then you can always think about too, like the other secrets of the plant, because you know, if I'm sure that you are, anybody on here, I'm sure that you are doing that, but you're like, oh, I wonder what else is true about this being, B-E-I-N-G, being, what else is true about this being? So when I see rosemary, I think of the rosemary tea vaginal wash that the Mexican ladies do after childbirth to like tonify their uterus. And then that reminds me of like rosemary in the ways that it's used for heart protection and healing the heart, and the secrets of the rose and how rosemary is involved in that. So my mind starts getting into those things too. So then I'm like, oh, now I brought this being into my life, that the more that I support this being, that being is supporting me, and we're cultivating this relationship. And then therefore the plant is going to do so much better because you're listening. She's a Mediterranean plant, so how can I maybe make her soil resemble that part of the world? That is a really good question. The rosemary that I've seen around here is all just in this native soil. Like there's nothing special that, I mean, there's some rosemary and maybe it's a different type of rosemary, but rosemary is growing everywhere in my neighborhood, like walls of rosemary. So you would want to look that up. So anytime, just like what I showed you guys in the yard, is like, find out the type of soil that's already there. And then like with this one, you have rosemary. So you can look up what type of soil does rosemary like. And then you'll find a whole bunch of things. And then you'll be able to do what that plant likes. So if it likes more acidic, like you can even buy, there's this brand called Black Magic that I think that's local to San Diego, that has all these different things. They have fertilizer for acidic plants, fertilizer for alkaline, fertilizer for those plants that like rocks and sand. I'm thinking about these succulents, which basically will grow in anything, anywhere, with nothing, even just like by themselves, not even in soil, because they're so magical. Yeah, I live in California, right here by the beach, which is really, it's crazy how these papaya trees grow so well for me in this soil. Every other place in my neighborhood that I see people have papaya trees, they're like come up to my neck and they're blooming and they have fruits, but my papaya trees were like over 8 feet tall. And you could see them from the main street, like they're huge. They look like the trees when I lived in India. And so I'm just like, I think that growing seeds, it's just like genetics and DNA. Like you don't know what the hell you're gonna get. Like you have some idea because you knew what you planted, but these little seed babies have a whole set of instructions unique to them, and they're all gonna come out however they want. Makes sense. Rosemary would grow there by the beach. Yeah. Yeah, our soil here is really strange though. Like whenever before I moved here and I thought about beach, I would think about tropical soil, but this soil here is desert. So it's like I'm in the desert at the beach, basically. So yeah, you just got to see what it is that you're working with. And you can also just Google it. There's they'll show you, like, some people have heavy clay. There's a lot of clay in the soil, and there's things that grow in clay. And so you find out what you have, you plant things that work with that. And what I did was like, oh, well, I have all this native soil, but I want to grow garden things. So changing it into what you want can take a while. I mean, it took me about 4 years to get that, what I called garden soil. It took me about 4 years of cover cropping, of growing things that I wasn't going to eat. It smelled like cat urine. I think people were, or maybe it was cats that were using it as like a litter box. So I had to like do a lot to take out, there was like these wood chips that I think were just soaking up pee for years. I took all the wood chips out, cleaned up. There was like metal, there was like all sorts of weird things in there, just trash, just things that ended up getting buried. So during the double digging, that's another good thing because you're going to touch every inch of soil. I didn't do double digging at first. First, I did cover crops, 2 years of cover crops, and then I did the double digging. Don't let this distract you because you can just do the double digging now. I didn't know about it back then. I only knew about cover cropping back then, but yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Anybody have about your situation, like what you've got going on and you wanted some ideas or anything like that? Let me know. I can't wait to go over to Megan's and I'm gonna totally try to just plant stuff out there. I definitely bring seeds with me when I take trips too and do that guerrilla gardening on other people's properties.
Yeah, in the spring, if anyone wants to come double dig, we've got a lot of space in Virginia.
Oh my God, that's so exciting.
It's a lot of digging. when you were talking about this, the amount of digging you did on the permaculture farm, I'm like, that's it.
Yeah, that's a party though. And you're going to get really strong too. Your shoulders are going to be all cut. Like, I'm super down.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody's asking, people spray plants on my lawn at my apartment. Would double digging help get rid of some of the toxins? I think that, see, this was a question that I had when I moved in here. I was like, there's no way I'm going to eat anything that grows in that soil that smells like a kitty litter box. So that's why I did the planting. The soil wants to grow food. Yeah. So somebody also was like, oh, why don't you just put boxes there? Well, I want to have a relationship with the earth, and I don't necessarily, I feel like the boxes were a condom for me. I was like, I don't want to have a condom. I just want this soil to be good and healthy. So I went ahead and chose to do the process. I feel like double digging, if you have a place that you feel like is toxic, like there's been spray and chemicals and all of that, I feel like the double digging done really thoroughly, meaning that you really are taking all of that. You know what, partially what I'm thinking too is the topsoil from the first spade, maybe you put that elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like into, so there's a thing called zoning, where zone 1 is going to be things you're doing every day. That's right outside my back, right when I open the door, that's my zone 1. I've got my herbs, the chayote vines, the things that I'm going to be working with every single day, zone 1. And then, well, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5 is things that you don't really mess with. Like if you had like pecan trees or something like that. What I would do with that top layer of dirt, soil, chemicals, toxic sprays, whatever, I would take that and move it to zone 5. And then the second spade, I would just pray like, okay, and hopefully the second level, the second spade, you set that aside, and maybe you just add more compost, more worms, more manure, and then bring back that top layer. And it would be up to you. Like you're in there and you're like, maybe that second spade deep is okay. Maybe you get to the second spade and you're like, no. And you put that also in zone 5. And then maybe you just have this whole open space that you put manure, worms, compost, and more compost and potting soil. And just, maybe you don't use any of it. And then, yes, it'll be totally fine, because the earth wants to be fine. It's on your side. And I think that would be a really good way to work with, if you already had some chemicals that had been sprayed there in the past. And then also if it's still questionable, maybe you grow a cover crop for the first season, and then do chop and drop, and then grow something that you would eat. Maybe you do something like that. My last question. Thank you so much for asking questions. It's 5:03. If anybody else has any question, I will be very happy to hear it. This is actually something I'm really super passionate about, and it's amazing how much this permaculture stuff and plants, medicine, magic, astrology, it's all one seamless topic. They all go together.
I wanted to ask you like how to start like a compost bin or something like that at my apartment, because I live in a small studio and I don't think I can have it inside. Like maybe outside.
It's tricky with neighbors and bins, because it's very noticeable. You know what I'm saying? Like you have the big bin there. And also like, I feel like the bin, I've had a bin before and it was disgusting. I fucking hated the bin because all the cockroaches and like bugs, they're all right there. And then you turning it and it smells. And I personally was like, not about the bin life.
What do you do now?
Oh, so I just dig a hole right in the ground and
Oh,
put the scraps right in the hole and just cover it up. So if you have one of those kitchen, you can go for like 2 or 3 days throwing your scraps into that kitchen bin. And then, so you've got that filled up, and then you just make one trip outside. I usually will dig the hole straight down, dump the stuff in there, put a layer of soil on top, go back in, do my thing. A couple days later, put it again, put some soil on top, and then you can go around. You know what I mean? Like you did this one, then the next week you're starting in the next section, and then you don't need that much space. If you're just digging straight down, you can go around, and then by the time you come back to that section, it'll already be, depending on how big your section is and how long it takes you. My stuff gets decomposed within like 2 weeks. It's already
I feel
ready.
like I would have to even like double dig before I even start a compost hole, like because I just feel like I don't my lawn hasn't been touched in a long time, but I feel like they do come around and like spray things, especially during like the spring and the summertime.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I have to double check, but I feel like I would have to like do that double digging even before starting the compost, probably.
That I think in the beginning of this video, I did mention that. I think I mentioned that because, yeah, there won't be anybody to eat. There won't be any workers to decompose your food. So
Yeah.
starting off with a double dig, putting some worms, getting some, establish a network of
Okay.
creatures that want to decompose your food first. Because yeah, now that I'm thinking about that, like if you just like dig in there and it's gonna just sit there and not do anything. And I think the more you've worked the soil, the faster it will decompose. And maybe what you could do also is just tell the landlord or whoever it is who hires people. What you could do too is like I've made little trail, put a bunch of crystals or stones or something like that around the space, and you can even put a sign that says don't spray or something, you know what I mean? If you make it nice, I feel like the person with the spray would have to be really weird.
Ooh, I like the idea of the sign, like no
Yeah.
spray.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right, anybody else? Well, it's 5:07 now, so if you have any more questions, you can always message me on our channel Telegram. If you guys, anybody's not in the Telegram on the channel, let me or Mystic know and we'll set you up or give you a link for it, because we can continue the conversation there if you have any questions come up or anything like that. Thank you all so much. So the next channel, I'm probably going to do it this week. I'm going to start teaching about Ayurveda. So we're going to start with the principles, the 3 principles of Ayurveda, and we'll probably get into the doshas. So we'll start to explore what